Hi. Welcome to the Human Design for Marketing podcast. I'm your host, Yvette Mayer, and this show's for you if you're done with cookie cutter marketing and ready to build your personal brand in alignment with who you really are. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Human Design for Marketing podcast. Before I dive into this episode, I have two questions for you. Number one, did you listen to our last episode where I released my new sacred brand song, Frequency? I hope you have. I am listening to this track every single day as I wake up and prepare myself to be in the energy of expansion. And I genuinely feel it creating a shift in me energetically. And it's here for you as well. So if you haven't listened to it yet, make sure, maybe listen to this episode first, but at the end, go back and listen to Frequency. Number two, have you signed up for my brand new, yes, it's brand new, even though it's an evolution, Influence Activation Masterclass? If you're listening to this in real time, which puts you at early May 2024, this class is coming up late next week. No, it's not that early in May, it's the 14th. Sorry about that. So it's coming up next week on the 23rd of May, 2024, which is the 22nd of May if you happen to be in the Northern Hemisphere or at least in the US. It is going to be absolutely magical. I know many of you have watched this either in one of my bundles or you've been along or caught it on the replay in other iterations. But this one is going to be a whole new level of awesome. I have personally felt really called to step in to more frequency in the way that I transmit this class. And so what I believe is going to be available for you by joining us, especially if you're there live, is to actually recode, like feel a shift inside of you that generates a up level and your energetics and your frequency beyond the class. That is what's on offer. So go to the description now, go now, sign yourself up. I cannot wait to be with you live. There's going to be a hot seat. You can ask me anything. I am so looking forward to seeing you there live. Now let's get into this week's episode. In the spirit of growing your influence, I've decided to tell the story of in a lot more detail of my last 2 years in business since I had a bit of a breakdown and some deeper behind the scenes context as to what I was going through when I had the download to really lean into human design for marketing. Okay, so this is, maybe you've heard a sprinkling of this before, but this is a much more robust understanding of where I was in my business and how my marketing was working for me, or not so much so, in mid 2022. So I'm going to take you back to May, June 2022, so exactly 2 years ago. Now, at that point, I had been in business for myself for almost 3.5 years, and I'd been focusing on business coaching for 2.5 years, and I had incredible success. Built my business up to multiple six figures, loving myself, my life, all working. But in retrospect, there was a bit of a COVID bubble that I experienced. So some of the growth that happened for me, it started to depress once that kind of huge opportunity quietly shrunk back to normality. So what really happened is during COVID, people had a lot more disposable income, were thinking about, "Oh, what is there to life? Like, is this all there is? Oh my God, now that we've faced something so frightening and that maybe for everybody at a collective level was the most confronting around mortality that they'd experienced, or a lot of people. And that brings up all the, well, once this is over, trusting that it will be, how do I reinvent myself? How do I reinvent my life? So as a result of more disposable income and life-defining moment that was COVID, there was a big rush of people wanting to launch businesses and do it online where they could do it from the comfort of their home. And I benefited from that. And I guess I knew to a degree that I was benefiting from that, but I didn't ever imagine that it would change again. I mean, I know now, like there are cycles in business, there are cycles in the way we market, there are cycles in everything. And I totally get that now. But at the time, it felt very, very challenging. And I started to feel like a fraud because a lot of the marketing that I'd been putting out there about my rapid growth to a multiple six-figure business didn't feel in integrity when I wasn't making that amount of money. And that was what was going on. I dropped back from averaging $20,000 months to 10 to 15, sometimes less. And that did not sit well with me. I found it very, very hard. Now, this is just me. I know that this same thing happened for a lot of my peers, and they were able to maybe navigate that more from a space of it's still true, it's still in integrity. I did that, but energetically, I found that really difficult. And so I was continually in this lack, not enough. How do I reinvent? What do I need to do? Who do I need to pay to make this easy again? And I'd also sold my primary residence and had access to a lot of my, let's call it, I was going to say life savings, but it's more of my gross net worth, right? So, I'm in my 50s, had a stellar career, bought into the property market at a good time. So when I sold, it gave me a huge opportunity. And I thought, hell, you know what I'm going to do with this money? I'm going to invest it into my business. I'm going to turn this around. And so I invested into a high ticket mastermind and at the very top level that came with one-on-one coaching, thinking that that was the answer for me. Well, sadly, I was disappointed because regardless of what I was investing into, and I was showing up for myself, I think that I was still in a lower frequency. It didn't change the trajectory of my business. In fact, my business continued to steadily go backwards in 2022. Now, I had a beautiful mastermind that ran for 3 full years with a lot of loyal ladies on the inside who were still inside and still such a big, beautiful part of my world. So I didn't have complete scarcity and lack. It wasn't like I couldn't support myself, but I didn't feel good. Which takes me to May, June 2022. So I decided that to really help expand me into a new energy, that I would relocate to Bali for 6 weeks. I love Bali. I think it is an incredible place for being in the zone. There are a lot of people that are digital nomads there. There's a really great setup for working from Bali. And I had a feeling that given my business was all about feeling lit up and liberated, that it would change things for me and that I would start to open into more expansion again, that people would vibe with me from Bali, come on in, and things would change. So I'm juggling this. Things aren't working, but let's show up in the energy of expansion, assume it's going to work. I'm big on manifestation. I'm doing all the manifesting. I'm journaling. However, I get there and I'm still feeling like nothing is working. Like I am someone who looks at my marketing metrics. So I was looking at that and not seeing a change. Still felt like, well, not just felt, was observing low engagement and not feeling good. And so guess what I did? Hired another coach. Yes, I spent more money. I was in the mastermind. I was paying a lot of money for the mastermind, not more than I was making, but like about 50% of the money that I was making, maybe a little bit under that. And then I spent more I invested more and I hired a private coach for a short period and then loved it so much, upgraded into her mastermind. So then I was paying for two masterminds. And I was actually getting very different advice from these two different coaches. And one of them was all about strategy, and the other one was all about self-belief, amazing content, and selling every day. And I think that I was leaning into the sell every day because I felt like what I'd been doing wasn't working. And yet that wasn't working either. And so I'm in all sorts of like, oh my goodness. And at that time, I decided that I was going to launch from Bali. And look, can I just say this? Regardless of what was going on with my engagement and marketing, my knowledge is unparalleled when it comes to deep understanding of marketing and how to build and scale digital products. I've done this for years. I've done all of the studies. I'm a line one. I go super deep. I've lived it. I've had six-figure launches for my mastermind. Like I'm not a newbie at all. I'm just in a world of pain. And so I decide that my Digital Product Academy course, which is freaking epic, by the way, and has had over 30 women go through it and has the most spectacular results and testimonials. Clients that went through that course, which was live in late 2020, 21, I think, will still get in touch with me and say that they still use that exact process and go and rewatch modules to this day when they're launching or setting up a new product. So I decided that instead of launching it as a straight course, I would launch it a little bit differently over a 3-month period and include how to launch, not just how to create the product. So I set myself up with a challenge, which was like a boot camp challenge. So it ran for 5 days. I marketed the whole event from Bali. And then I ran the live challenge from there as well. And I'm thinking back to that time, right? So for the lead up, I was in Uluwatu. And so I can think exactly where I was staying. I was in a more upmarket kind of resort style hotel. It had some beautiful backdrops. It was great for me doing the content. And then I moved from there back to Canggu, which is where I based myself for most of the 6 weeks, and stayed in more of a homestay. Homestays in Bali, if you don't know Bali, they are hotels, but they've typically got 10 to 15 rooms, like queen rooms, and they all kind of go around a pool. And you kind of get to know people a little bit more. And as a solo traveler, I quite like that. Anywho, so I go into this launch. And it's big for me to be showing up in a launch tech-wise, making sure everything's working. It's a launch event I've never run before, this 5-day boot camp called Freedom Seekers Boot Camp. So on point with the messaging, right? Because digital products are all about scale and bringing more freedom into your business. And what ended up happening is every day, and I am not someone who will quit, by the way, but every day I would have anywhere between 1 and 3 people show up to the boot camp. That is it. And I felt so sick to my stomach, but at the same time, would not allow that to impact the quality of the work and how I expressed myself, and holding the faith and trust that many, many more of those, I think I had like 30 people signed up, would watch it on the replay, and that it would end up leading to a big success. Well, was it a success? Well, I brought in 2 clients. So yeah, it was a success. I think any sales is a success. Was it a resounding success? Absolutely no. Did I feel good about it? Not at all. I felt terrible. I felt like there is something wrong with me. I'm broken. Nobody wants what I've got to say anymore. Nobody's listening. You know, I was being very, very hard on myself. And I was also having to create a new product. It was a fusion, but it was a new product, and set it all live and served 2 amazing women, but also very aware that I'd set myself up to create 3 months of holding space, and the remuneration end of things was very light. It was under $5,000. So that's where I was in my business exactly 2 years ago. That's where I was. That's how bad it was. And then it got worse. Well, worse, I don't know. I felt worse because when I got back to Australia, I was supporting my family with some things going on. Both my parents are ailing, and my close family in Sydney were traveling, and so I had to stay there to be support. And then I got COVID almost immediately, and it was the first time I'd had COVID, and it really knocked me. Like I had 3 weeks of feeling like I was like, ugh, not coping at all. So you can only imagine that I was already feeling like so heavy around my business, and then I got COVID, and so that just tenfolded. Ten's probably an exaggeration, but that just amped right up to the point of, do I want to keep doing this? Like, is this actually worth it? I left my corporate career to feel more fulfilled, to be happy, to be lit up and liberated ultimately. And I was feeling anything but. I was feeling like, let's get into a ball and cry, and I want to quit. Now, as I got better, I moved through the recovery period, things started to shift. And you guys know the rest of this story in a lot more detail, but I will give you the highlights because I think it's really important, as I know many of you are going through tough times. It's fair to say in the last couple of years, I've gone against the trend. My business has absolutely exploded while the market is questioning a lot. And what I'm hearing from other people's businesses is that it's a really difficult time to grow online because people are more discerning. They're taking their time. They're a lot more cynical about what's out there. And so if you're feeling that, I want you to know that despite what's going on, it is possible for you to come back to you and to align into who you are on the inside and fully express and radiate your brilliance and turn it around, because that's my story. That's my story completely. So how this unfolded was, had the I want to quit moment, moved through that, got to a place of realization that I had completely hitched my self-worth to my income, and that had taken me to a place of energetic scarcity. And no matter what I did, that was still my core imprint. That's the belief I was running subconsciously a lot of the time, but it was there, and it was draining the life force out of me. And I had a good look at this and realized that it was true, and it remains true, that I did not leave my big fat salary and all the money that I had access to, and the life and the freaking everything that comes with a big corporate career, first class travel, you name it. I didn't leave that to get rich. I didn't leave that because I wanted to make a ton of money. And there was a moment, this is a very, very, very good reality check for me. There was a moment before, not even a moment, but along the way before leaving corporate, I told many people that I didn't care what I earned in the future. That, and I know this is high for some, that even if I only ever earned $100,000 a year again, that I would be so much happier. And that was what mattered. It's interesting that I was earning $100,000 thereabouts when I had this massive meltdown. But I'd been at 200. So you can kind of get how that happened. But I had this call to my knees, and I fully had the drop in that it was time to not just know my human design and scratch the surface. I mean, I'd had a lot of training, but I felt like I had all the knowledge. And I absolutely did the things like check in with my sacral. I'm a sacral. Make sure that I was feeling lit up and try and do less of what wasn't lighting me up, but I wasn't living it. I wasn't following through in my marketing. And so I had this drop in that I was going to throw all the advice from coaches out the window, and I was going to follow my design. Maybe I was influenced by Emma Dunwoody because she'd built her business doing that. It's possible. because she was flying while I was struggling, and she's a good friend. So at that point, I decided I'm not going to sell that incredible digital course academy thing at the moment. It's not feeling good for me. My sacral was saying, no, doesn't light me up right now. And I decided to launch a 6-week, quite low ticket, energetically focused program called the Spring Mini Mind. Now, this was a beautiful, like completely guided mix of business intelligence with energetics. So things like EFT, how to manifest, all the things that I love and that my spiritual side geeks out on and lives, instead of I need this niche thing, which was digital products, to work. And I need to follow all the rules to make this work. I went from there to, I'm just going to open into, what do I actually want to share? What do I want to teach? I still want to be a business coach, but how? And in that process, because I was following my design, I had the idea to offer a 15-minute human design for marketing express reading for everybody that signed up. I assumed that then I would Google human design and marketing and find a whole lot of literature. I did not. I found very little. It led me to Juliet Stapleton, who I had on the podcast not long after then. I did a reading with her, and then I line wondered. I was like, okay, so there's not a whole lot of people doing this. There's not broad information out there for me to learn from. I'm going to figure this out. And that began the development of my own IP in human design and marketing. So I went through the types and the profile lines in particular to begin with, and came up with my own interpretation. Now, I did watch other people's classes that were doing human design for business in different ways, but I made sure that I was really connecting into my marketing genius in how I interpreted it and brought fresh thinking through. Every person that I did these express readings for was completely blown away. And that's when my little sacral started to go, oh, this is really exciting. These women are loving this and taking action and having a result. And in my mastermind, I shared with them that was what was happening. They wanted me to expand. And so I ran a masterclass for them. It was off the charts in terms of their feedback, how engaged they were. And that was my calling into human design for marketing. It was not a plan. It was not a strategy at that point. It was one step in front of the other, following my own design and feeling this is lighting me up. My sacral saying, yes, will I do this? Will I do this? Will I do this? In November, which is a couple of months later, around Black Friday, I decided, you know what? Maybe I would like to do some readings. By the way, if you're someone who teaches human design, I had done readings for a few clients in the past, and I'd found it so labor intensive, like the hardest thing ever, the amount of work that I needed to do to really dig into all of the aspects of their charts. And that had exhausted me to the point of thinking I never wanted to do that. But because I changed, so did how I viewed this. And I went through this as an experiment of, well, I'll just do a few and I'll focus on the areas that I really believe are the most powerful for marketing. And I'll see, does it feel good? Does it not feel good? Should I keep doing them? Should I do more of this in my business? And so on. And what happened was, again, as I did these readings, and I did them at a really low price point, I called in some incredible humans. They were just blown away by my ability to fuse human design and marketing in such a potent way that, again, I was just getting this reinforcement that this was work that I was meant to do in the world. And that's really what led me to, a month later, you've probably heard this before, but a moment when I went down the beach to journal, and I was still thinking this was just going to be something I did on the side. And I saw so many white butterflies that, like, it was thousands. It wasn't even hundreds. It was nuts. as I walked, sat down on my towel, and then all these bees, like 30 bees were around me. And I'm like, what is trying to come through nature for me right now? Kind of did a bit of Googling as you would probably, to realize that there was a very clear message coming through for me. And the message was that I needed to go all in, that it was time to surrender to what was the universe's signs connecting to me and saying, yes, this is your path. It's time for you to pivot, recreate your business, and do this in a big way. It's going to be hard work, hence the bees. Bees mean hard work. And that was a really big defining moment that I'll never forget, that trip down to the beach and how I kind of went down there as one person and left having made this huge decision, which has been the most prosperous, aligned, incredible journey. And the biggest thing and the reason that I started this story is how much more influential I am in this space. And as a marketer now, it's night and day, because I do embody my design, that I do tune in, and it's not just type can I just say the profile lines, they like understanding who I am through my profile lines and what that means for marketing. I think that's been the biggest game changer. Like knowing that as a line one, that I am somebody who dives deep, who is very capable of creating IP that sets the foundation for growth, and showing up and expressing that through my inner authority, that in itself, absolute game changer. And I'm also a line 5, which means that I know how to communicate that in a bit of a, this is the problem I had, and this is the solution, and how this can help you too, which is kind of what I've just done in this episode. So there's been that. And then I expanded into really building my aligned brand blueprint, which also incorporates your personality sun and your personality Mercury. I do so much more than that, but I got very clear and I worked hard to build the IP. So fast forward to now. In February, the last time I launched the Frequency Project, I had 250 people sign up to the masterclass. I had over 40 people that were there live that stayed the entire time. I mean, can you even compare that to where I was 2 years ago? No. It was a $27,000 launch. It felt hard at times energetically, but overall amazing. And it's all because of human design for marketing. Like I would not be here. I would not be here. And I will say this, I think some of you listening are like, I just need to do this thing. How? Give me more context. I do believe that I've been led by human design, but some of the decisions that led me into were so strategically sound. Like moving from a very cluttered marketplace into a space with less competition and being on trend. Like human design is growing. So even though I'm showing up and I'm taking action from my design, the universe is also meeting me with opportunity. It's both. It's the universe meeting with me with the right opportunity in alignment with my design that I believe has made the biggest difference. And that's been because I trust this and I show up and I am an example of what I teach. Like I believe that I am proving to you every single day in the validity of the work that I do. Not just in my results, but in my clients' results, in my broader community. I know that I'm touching thousands and thousands of lives at this point, and there are so many of you out there who've never connected with me that have made shifts because of my work, and that is the most generator satisfying place to be ever. So that's a bit more of the background into how I became so influential, which I wanted to share with you as we move into next week's Influence Activation Masterclass, because I think this will help you decide to say yes to yourself and jump into this class with me live, because I want this, which is just a sprinkling of my energy, to amplify for you, to really help you elevate and expand into what is possible for you as well. That's all for this episode. I will be back in your ears sometime real soon. Bye for now. There are heaps more resources in the show notes. I can't wait to be back in your ears again soon. Bye for now.